Just Weeping was the second episode in Series 1 and was written by Taylored Vision, aka Miles Taylor. Production for this episode started in late 2015. However, this would not be the final version of this episode. Version 1 had no stop motion at all, and there wasn't actually a physical set to film on. It was all done in front of a really bad green screen. On screen right now is some footage from the first version of Just Weeping, which isn't actually very good at all. I wasn't happy with the result at all because I hadn't done Miles' script justice. So after filming that, I decided to go on to the next episode, which was Concealed Within, which I never released because it wasn't very good. After that, I decided to film Gone Too Far. Once filming had finished on that, mid-2016, I began to re-film Just Weeping. This time I used stop motion and used a physical graveyard set, and it looked much better. I was incredibly pleased with the outcome, and I hope you enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed filming it. I asked the writer of this story, Miles Taylor, about Just Weeping, and found out what he thought about the story. So first of all, what was your initial idea for the story, and when writing the script, did any changes occur?
My initial idea for the story itself, my memories of it are a bit hazy, because it was a long time ago, about 2 or 3 years ago, I think, when I wrote the script. So my memory of it isn't quite certain, but from what I can remember, the story itself didn't really undergo many changes after its initial conception. I think my initial idea was very much what I went off for the script, and nothing after that really changed. So, I mean, because what it was basically was a very simple idea, simple structure, and as such, not really much changed from the initial conception of it. And not much needed to be altered after that. There might have been a few dialogue tweaks, but apart from that, nothing major changed, aside from the fact that the incarnation of the Doctor changed from Smith to Capaldi when the series, the Doctor for the series changed. So that though didn't really require an awful lot of alterations to the script anyway either. So yeah, I'd say the initial idea of the story was very much the same to what you saw in the end product on screen.
If this episode was in the canon universe of Doctor Who, where would it fit in?
Placing this in the series, I'd say it's probably Series 9, somewhere in there. I think the red velvet Capaldi costume has been used for this episode, so I guess that gives an indication of the latter half of Series 9, so around Face the Raven sort of time, maybe between Sleep No More and Face the Raven, I guess, somewhere around there, I suppose.
Were there any other episode titles you had in mind for the episode?
Working title for this story was actually Stone Cold, and that was the title basically for the whole time I was writing it, and it was only when I'd finished writing the scripts that it changed, because I realised that it was actually already a title for a figure adventure on YouTube. Can't remember who by, but it was definitely out there, so that's when I thought, right, I'm going to need to change the title. And I really liked the little bit of dialogue at the end, the little speech by the Doctor as the TARDIS is materialising, or dematerialising in a way. So I decided to use that little section as the title, and thus it became Just Weeping.
When looking back at the script, is there anything you would change?
Looking back on the story, I'd probably, if I was to do it again, I'd probably add a bit more action for it. As for the most part, it really is. If you boil it down, it is just a lengthy dialogue scene set in one single location, which is fine. I mean, I was happy with it, but there's not a massive amount going on in the grand scheme of things. So if I did it again, I'd add a bit more, maybe some action sequences and things, and I'd probably have bulked out the story, added more locations, things like that. I think the limited cast works well, though. I think just having the Doctor, Clara and the Weeping Angel, it just makes it a bit more atmospheric. So I would keep the cast that size, but yeah, I would maybe certainly add a bit more action to it. Maybe the Doctor and Clara, I don't know, running around the graveyard. We get stuff in maybe in an abandoned church or something, getting on siege by the angels, that sort of thing. So yeah, I guess I'd add a bit more oomph to the story, but who knows.
Were there any specific musical cues you had in mind for certain parts of the script when writing it?
didn't really have any music cues in mind when I was writing the script. I just sort of I wrote the story and there it was. I didn't really have anything in my head as I was writing it. I guess if I was to think of any music cues, I probably would have thought, as I was writing it, maybe some tense and jump scare stuff, really, like the music in Time of Angels, Flesh and Stone, that sort of the violin shrieks, I guess, because that's a very sort of Weeping Angel-esque motif in a way. I mean, I suppose when you're writing a Weeping Angel story, the natural music you have in your head is the soundtrack from Blink, because it is just so creepy, and I suppose that was what I had in mind when I was writing, because that music is really atmospheric, and I guess it was something like that, but just overall a lot of jump scare stuff, I suppose, was what I had in mind for the music.
Looking at the ending, do you think this story could have a second part in the future, or do you think it works well enough as a standalone episode?
Well, I did actually leave the story open-ended, with the angel left not quite just weeping, as you might have seen by the end of the story. And also there's a lot of hints to other things, such as Gallifrey, which the angel alludes to knowing about to the Doctor, which... it was a little sort of wink, wink, nudge, nudge thrown in there by myself when I was writing the script. So there are elements in there which weren't quite tied up, and there's also the open-ended aspects of the end of the story to it. So, I think it could actually do with a second part, and if anyone wants to write one, then I would welcome it, because I think it could benefit from it, actually. And I mean, this in essence is basically it could be a prequel to something much bigger, or a smaller sort of part in a grander, bigger mechanism. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm sounding like Stephen Moffat now. But yeah, if it didn't get a second part, I think it'd stand up perfectly fine as a standalone story, just shrouded in an awful lot of mystery, as the Weeping Angel stories often are.
If the opportunity arose, would you consider writing another episode for my FA series, whether it be a mini-sode or a full-length episode? And if so, what would it include?
I would absolutely love to write another one, but it's just a matter of time. I never seem to have enough of it nowadays. I just wouldn't want to rush the script or make it, a half-assed attempt. I would want to just make it as good as I can. I mean, that's how I always try and write scripts and make figure adventures. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I don't usually write for other people, because I'm always so worried that I'd never be able to do them justice and write a good story that they'd be happy with. So I'd love to. It's just that sometimes I don't think I'm capable of doing it, and that's usually because of time. I mean, this one, Just Weeping, was written a few years ago when I had a lot more time available to me to refine the script and at the end of it deliver something I was happy with, and that I was happy to be made into an episode, because that really is something that all figure adventure makers face, and filmmakers in general. It's just we always seem to need more time. That's always something that crops up, and certainly something that I always run into. And if we had that extra bit of time, we could make everything just so much better, but it all does seem to come together in the end, and there always seems to be a fantastic product that comes out of it, but we could always do with just a little bit more time.
And that concludes the behind the scenes look at Just Weeping. I didn't take any behind the scenes photo, which I kind of regret when filming or producing the episode, hence why there are none in this behind the scenes look at the episode. However, I would just like to say a big thank you to Miles Taylor for taking the time to write a superb script, and also taking the time to talk about the episode itself. So that was a look back at the episode that took 2 whole years to finally release, and hopefully I did Miles Taylor's script justice. Until the next time, bye bye.